studies in Acts. We are currently on 22, chapter 22. So when we left 2 weeks ago, because last week I wasn't feeling very well, and I appreciate you all for understanding, but we left off in 21 where Paul had just been arrested in Jerusalem and he wanted to speak to the crowd. And so let's take up with 22 where Paul begins to speak. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different here. This is, I have the NIV on the Bible. Okay? So I'm going to play that. This is the NIV version. I'm not sure which version you got.
Yeah.
Everybody probably has the New Revised Standard version. But I've got this on digits, and so I'm going to play that for us. We can listen to the whole chapter 22, and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
Okay? So let's try that out. Here we go.
Simon, he said to them in Aramaic.
Hold on.
Acts 22.
Acts 22.
Brothers and fathers, listen now to my defense. When they heard him speak to them in Aramaic, they became very quiet. Then Paul said, I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in this city. I studied under Gamaliel and was thoroughly trained in the law of our ancestors. I was just as zealous for God as any of you are today. I persecuted the followers of this way to their death, arresting both men and women and throwing them in prison, as the high priest and all the council can themselves testify. I even obtained letters from them to their associates in Damascus, and went there to bring these people as prisoners to Jerusalem to be punished. About noon, as I came near Damascus, suddenly a bright light from heaven flashed around me. I fell to the ground, and heard a voice say to me, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? Who are you, Lord? I asked. I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting, he replied. My companions saw light, but they did not understand the voice of him who was speaking to me. What shall I do, Lord? I asked. Get up, the Lord said, and go into Damascus. There you will be told all that you have been assigned to do. My companions led me by the hand into Damascus because the brilliance of the light had blinded me. A man named Ananias came to see me. He was a devout observer of the law and very respected by all the Jews living there. He stood beside me and said, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And at that very moment I was able to see him. Then he said, The God of our ancestors has chosen you to know his will, and to see the righteous one, and to give words from his mouth. You will be his witness to all people of what you have seen and heard. And now, what are you waiting for? Get up, be baptized, and wash your sins away, calling on his name. When I returned to Jerusalem and was praying in the temple, I fell into a trance, and saw the Lord speaking to me. Quick, he said, leave Jerusalem immediately, because the people here will not accept your testimony about me. Lord, I replied, these people know that I went from one synagogue to another to imprison and beat those who believe in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I stood there giving my approval and guarding the clothes of those who were killing me. Then the Lord said to me, Go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Now listen, Paul, until he said this. Then they raised their voices and shouted, Rid the earth of him, he's not fit to live. And they were shouting and throwing off their clothes and flinging dust through the air. And then the order that Paul be taken to that. He directed that he be flogged and interrogated in order to find out why the people were shouting at him afterwards. As they stretched him out to flog him, Paul said to the centurion standing there, Is it legal for you to flog a Roman citizen who hasn't even been found guilty? When the centurion heard this, he went to the commander of the order. And when the duty asked, This man is a Roman citizen. The commander went to Paul and asked, Tell me, are you a Roman citizen? Yes, I am, he answered. Then the Lord said, I had to pay a lot of money for my citizenship, but I was born a citizen, Paul replied. Those who were about to interrogate him withdrew immediately. The commander felt alarmed when he realized he had put Paul, a Roman citizen, in chains. The commander wanted to find out exactly why Paul was being accused by the Jews. So the next day he released him and ordered the chief priests and all the members of the Sanhedrin to assemble. Then he brought Paul and had him stand before them. Acts 23.
All right. Interesting, huh? So, remember from last time that Paul was going to Jerusalem, and all the disciples that he knew and everything were saying, no, don't go. And now you see why. Okay. So he goes to Jerusalem, and he's seen with a man that is known to be a Greek. And then later, he is seen in the temple. Okay? following that? So he's seen out in the set down in Jerusalem, and he's like, what's Paul doing with that Greek guy? Gentile. And then later, Paul is in the temple. Now, the temple has different layers. There is a wall, and you go into that wall, and you're in the courtyard. That's called the Gentile courtyard, where Gentiles can come and they can congregate there. And then you have an inner court that's just for the Jewish people. And then you have the temple itself, and that, of course, going into the temple is usually just for the priests. So he was seen in the inner courtyard, not with this guy, this Travis, but with some other, Timothy and some other Jewish people. And they just assumed that he had brought a Greek in there, and they were causing a commotion about it, because they understood that Paul had converted to this, the way, or Christianity as we know today. So, caused an uproar. Centurions come out, and they're like, what's this uproar? Because they want to squash all the uproars. And we're at probably in the late 40s, maybe early 50s. Okay, so Paul doesn't have very much more time. And we're less than 20 years, about 20 years away from when the Romans completely wiped the Jews out of Palestine area, the Jerusalem. They tear down the temple and everything. So we're getting towards that. And so there's this tension there, just waiting for something to happen. And the centurions that are in charge, they're not going to let anything happen. So the slightest bit of turmoil, slightest bit of contention, they're going to say, like, we got to stop it. And so the centurion comes out, and he takes Paul, and Paul begs him, let me talk to the crowd. I'm sure I can persuade the crowd. Okay. So he tells his story. Well, first of all, he starts speaking in Aramaic. So that's their language. And then they're like, whoa, wait a minute. So he's not speaking to them in Greek, and he's not speaking to them in Latin, which they didn't speak during there. But he's speaking to them in Aramaic. Okay, so he starts speaking to them in Aramaic. Boom, they start listening. And then he recounts the story himself. See, earlier, if you remember in chapter 9, Paul, that was when Saul became Paul. Okay, and he saw this story right here was told. Now it's being told by Paul himself. Okay, here's something I heard the other day. I thought this was interesting. So it's talking about trans people. Okay, you need to keep the name you had at birth. You don't change your name, right? That's what they say. You were born a man. I'm going to call you Bob, and that's the way it is. I'm not going to call you Roberta because you were born a man. And so I'm not going to dignify your thoughts that, not thoughts, but your personhood that you are a female. And so I'm going to call you Bob. Do you get where I'm going with this? What was Paul's name? That's what we call him. You see what I'm saying here? They changed Paul's name from Saul to Paul, but yet you're not going to give dignity to a person because they changed their name from Bob to Roberta. I thought that was funny. Anyway. So he gets up there, he relays his story, telling about all the atrocities he's done against Christians when he first started. the first thing he reminds the people is, who did he study under? Gamaliel, which is a very prominent Jewish priest / teacher, or rabbi, I should say, not priest, rabbi. And so he's taught a lot of people. He is like this academy. So if you got into his academy to learn the Bible, learn law is what they called it, through him, you were a good student. Okay, so he studied under Gamaliel, and he goes on, he talks about he was there when they killed Stephen. He says that I've beaten and I've caused people to beat. I even got a letter to go to Damascus to arrest people and bring them back. And then we got his conversion story. And then we go down and we read his conversion story, where he is, the first thing we notice in verse 8, who does Jesus say he is? I am Jesus of Nazareth. Where was Jesus born? Outside of the Gospels, where it says that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, Jesus of Nazareth, that's what he's been known as. He wasn't known from where he was born, but he was known from Nazareth. And Nazareth was kind of a border area where half Jew, half Gentile, they all kind of lived in this area together. So that's kind of interesting that everywhere you read Jesus of Nazareth. Have you ever wondered where the Church of the Nazarene came from? That's what they did. So
did his family maybe live in Nazareth?
Well, that's the consensus. The consensus is that scholars today don't believe that there was a census. There's nothing outside of the Bible saying that there was a census at that time. But yet, to fulfill prophecy that he had to be born there, the Savior had to be born there, they made that story. So he's born there, and then of course through the persecution and the killing of the children, he went to Egypt, and then out of Egypt he was called, and he goes back to Nazareth, where his family was living. So
Also, to fulfill the prophecy, Messiah would be a Nazarene.
yeah, you notice it has. So, okay, so I just wanted to put that out there. So he talks about that, and then he goes on. Ananias tells him to get up and do what? Be baptized. What is baptism, Cindy?
An outward expression of an inward change.
Outward expression of an inward change.
According to the Baptist.
Yes, according to the Baptist theology. In other words, you're baptized to show everybody that something has changed within you. Does that make sense? How are we supposed to be baptized?
Immersion.
But I will baptize you with water, John the Baptist says. But the one after me,
Baptize you in the Spirit.
with the Spirit. So we're supposed to be baptized with the Spirit. So when we're baptized, we're supposed to bring on the Spirit, and we're supposed to live inside that Spirit of love, compassion, the Spirit of God.
So it's like an outward sign of the Spirit.
Yeah, it's like when were you born?
Long time ago.
You can point to a time. Yeah. So when did you receive the Spirit? If I
was in high school.
Okay. But there's a point when you have that come upon you. And so if I'm baptized in water, that's my new birth. So it's kind of, you can take and point to that particular time, that's when my life changed. And so that's the idea behind baptism, the idea behind an outward sign of an inward change. So it says, get up and be baptized. He does. And he said that he was praying, and after that he's praying in the temple. And Jesus spoke to him again, says, get up, get out of Jerusalem, because people are going to kill you. And so he's telling this story. He's telling the story. And then he says, Jesus says to them, go, I will send you far away to the Gentiles. Trigger word. So this is a trigger for the Gentiles. And notice in 22, notice what it says there. The crowd listened to Paul until he said that. Then they raised their voices and shouted, rid the earth of him. He is not fit to live. In other words, kill him because he's talking favorable about Gentiles. What he said was, I am going to take our understanding of God, I am going to take our love of our God and take it to the Gentiles so they can be in the Spirit as well. What's wrong with that?
He was their God.
It was their God. Yeah. See that today, don't we? We want the blessings, and if we tell you you're going to get the blessings, we don't want you to have the blessings, because we want to be who we are and not you. We want to make sure our country is full of people that look like us, act like us, pray like us, and not you people. And that's what happens here. There's a lot of kind of, and this is something that I struggle with. The idea of family first. In other words, I'm not going to give you a blessing until I can offer to my family first. Even though it might be a long time before I see my family and can give them that blessing, whatever it is. But instead, I'm going to withhold the blessing for you until I've made myself. And what is this? This is a power grab. What's that? It's selfish. This is a power grab. I want to make sure my family is strong and taken care of before I take care of you. And you see this over and over again in the Bible. And that's why we talk about how God continually sends prophets and says, welcome the stranger. You know, take care of the people that are living within you. And all of this stuff, but yet, again and again and again, they don't do it. And you just point the finger right at the Jews, right? All throughout the Bible. What happens when you point your finger at the Jews? You got 3 more fingers pointing back at you. Today, Christianity is acting the same way.
Sounds like that was the beginning of segregation.
Exactly. They were believed highly in segregation. There was the Jews, and then there was, they didn't even talk about this people. It was the Jews and the Gentiles, everybody else. Okay, I thought that was interesting. What do you think about that? You think, is that something that's happening today as well in our churches? Is that happening in our churches?
Well, it happened when the city of Tampa, I mean, it's a great melting pot. You have the Cuba City, you have the Italian club, a Cuban club, I don't know, there's dozens, or not dozens, but 4 or 5 groups. So the like nationalities kind of banded together to support each other as they were getting to know each other.
That's, yeah.
And when I grew up, there was a Catholic church on this corner that was German, and a block later, it was Italian, St. Patrick's Day, what's that?
ultimately, it's based in fear. I don't really understand those people, maybe not even speak the same language as those people, so they can't be like me. And they can't be compassionate and loving like me because they don't do the same things I do. They do, they just do it in their own way. Go ahead, Sam.
This is the concept of othering people.
Yeah.
And something, you look at the Bible, and there's just the whole Testament is about othering everyone as others, and not bringing a perspective of other people into religion. They were set apart, they were chosen, they were exiled, they were saved, they were, all, and everybody else was just not us. And so that's kind of what the evangelical church is doing, even to other people who are followers of Christ. You can't be pro, LGBTQ, be a Christian, it's just not possible. You can't be Christian and not support, pro-life. You can't possibly be a Christian and not support the death penalty. So it's like, there's taken this, again, concept of othering and just apply it to Christianity as did the Jews. And that's what happened to Judaism. It's what's coming to Christianity.
Did y'all hear, that's the term that they're using today, othering someone.
So
It's
it's
not,
not called the concept?
It's called a concept of othering, where I don't understand you, so you're just other, you're just set apart, especially for when it comes to our trans brothers and sisters. They're really a huge, victim, for lack of a better word, of this type of concept. And I don't understand you. I'm not gonna spend time to understand you, so I just assume that you're
different.
what now?
Yeah, you're not a Christian because you don't think the way I.
So I'm just gonna give up on you and concentrate on the people that believe like me. It's a concept where you just don't have to accept anybody that's not like you or believe like you. Yes, it's something that's been happening since the beginning of man.
Exactly.
And part of being a Christian means that you put those things aside because we're looking at a different lofty type of mentality. We're not trying to other people, we're trying to include them.
Yes.
Regardless of whether we understand it or not.
Exactly, and that's, and I always, at first, I didn't understand homosexuality, okay? I didn't. But the idea, okay, so these are people, they're loving people, they're more loving people than I've seen that aren't in the LGBTQ, community. And so I read books and I studied, I read autobiographies of people coming out and all this other stuff, so I could understand them better. But the point is, I could have just stopped at saying, I don't understand them, and so away with them. Kind of like today, I don't understand that concept. How do I say this? I don't understand trans people. I don't understand how that works in their mind and in their bodies. But that doesn't mean that I have to say there's something other than me. No, they're a human being. What they feel and what they believe and what they, that's their person. I'm just called to love them and share God with them and do good things for them, bless them, and have them be a part of my life in my community, whether I understand them or not. And I was going to say something else, but I rambled on too long. But the point is that just because you don't understand something doesn't mean you can't include them in what you're going through.
Well, 50 years ago, gays and lesbians were the other, what do you call it, the others, and through people having enough courage to study it or whatever, people came about, and it's like, okay, we gave an inch, they took a foot, now they want trans people, so now they can't, no one can deal with that now, so.
I would say that as followers of
because you're not like me, you know, and I say rejected, but it goes further than that. It goes to hatred and like I said, trying to marginalize or oppress these people. Okay. And it all comes from what? The word Gentile. Going to the Gentiles. So that's, ooh, how dare you. How dare you love people that aren't like us. But then we can't point the finger at the Jews because we're doing the same things.
It's human nature.
And it stems from the one thing that we're told 365 times in the Bible: do not fear. Do not fear, because fear is the catalyst behind all of this. I fear what I don't know. That's my soapbox. I'm gonna step down from it right now. So it's Cindy, new term that we use is othering. Don't other people. Okay. So he goes on. They said, rid the earth of him. They're starting a big commotion. Centurion's gonna squash the commotion, you know, before it gets into a riot. And so he takes Paul, has him, okay, we're gonna flog him and we'll interrogate him. So you're gonna take him, flog him in front of everybody to say, see, we're punishing him. Now be quiet. We'll take care of this. Okay, that's kind of what happened. Take Paul, they stretch him out on the pole, the flogging. Centurion comes out and he says, is it lawful for you to flog a Roman citizen? Kind of put the brakes on here. I could be the one being flogged for flogging a Roman citizen. And so he questions him and he says, how much did you have to pay to be a Roman citizen? I paid a lot of money. Paul says, I was born a Roman citizen. Interesting, huh? He played that privilege card very well. But the point here is, not only can you become a Roman citizen because you're born a Roman citizen, you know, your mom or your father was a Roman citizen, that makes you a Roman citizen, right? Your mom and your dad were Americans and you were born here in America, so that makes you an American, right?
Unless.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I thought this was very relevant for us today. So he says that the centurion, I should say, says that I had to pay a lot of money for mine. What? A centurion, a soldier of Rome, was not born a Roman citizen. Interesting, huh? Where was he born? It doesn't say.
Captive or slave of some
Exactly. That's where the Romans did it. When they took over an area, they said, okay, give us 100 of your, young men so we can put them into servitude, put them into the armies, and fight for us. Okay? And then after he's fighting for them, he's proved himself, he's a centurion now, he walked up through the ranks, he probably paid to become a Roman citizen. Because why? Because you got perks like this. They could just grab you and beat you. Okay? Kind of like it's supposed to be today. They can't just walk down the road and grab you and throw you in a van, take you off somewhere, and you just away. That's the way it's supposed to be. And this we see in Rome at that time. That's the way it was, because that Roman citizen or that Roman centurion, he was not going to lay a finger on Paul after he said that, because it could be reversed, that he could be the one on the pole getting flogged. So that's chapter 22 in a nutshell. What do you think? Very relevant for today? Several things in there that just ring true for what's going on today. Okay. And then next week, the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is the council of elders, or the Jewish